if we keep playing and fighting for each other. And no matter what happens, we just say, what's next? That's all we do. Somebody turn on some damn music.
You're listening to the Gambling Gauchos. Talking Texas Tech, betting on the Big 12 and beyond. We've got everything you need, money lines, memes, and matadors.
Well, you want to quit, Ethan? That'll be the day.
Now, here's Kyle Jacobson and Rob Bro, the Moneyline Matadors, the Casino Cowboys, the Parlay Picadors.
You see, in this world, there's two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns, and those who dig. You dig. Win.
The Gambling Gauchos. Oh, and one more thing. It's all West Texas. It always has been.
Welcome into the Gambling Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Kyle Jacobson, live in the Cardinal Sports Center studio. Cardinal Sports Center, where you can gear up for anything you need to gear up for. Texas Tech baseball, the upcoming football season. Maybe you're traveling for Texas Tech football and you want everyone to know that you are a Red Raider. You can get all your Texas Tech athletic gear at Cardinals Sports Center. Anything you need to do this summer as well. You can get it online, mycardinalsports.com, or in person, right outside the loop on Slide Road. Kyle, how you doing, man?
I am excellent.
Good.
Why is that funny?
You just short and sweet. You're excellent.
Yeah.
Let me get back into it. Hey, this is Dave Campbell's Republic of Football episode as well. We always are. We love those people over at Dave Campbell's, the Republic of Football. I'm excited to listen to some of the other spring game recaps. I saw the Baylor guys tweeting about theirs. I saw the TCU people tweeting about theirs this weekend. So excited to see what everyone else thinks about the spring game. Texas Tech also had their spring game. We'll talk about it a little bit today. I think we'll do baseball first and then recap the spring game just a little bit. We'll have a deep dive. Later in the week, we'll also talk Tyree Wilson today. But baseball-wise, another series win, not a sweep. You lose the third game again. You had a real opportunity this weekend to take a large step in the Big 12. Instead, you took a medium step. Thoughts on that, Kyle?
Yeah, that's basically exactly how I view it. If there's any series that you point to and say you kind of expect a sweep or where not getting a sweep feels like a disappointment, it's when you get to play by and like far and away the worst team in the conference in Lubbock, and you jump out to a 2-0 lead with a lot of your bullpen available because of Molina going 7 innings in game one. It stinks, and you alluded to it. We've been tracking results versus common opponents with Texas to try to make up for that 3-game sweep. And you got one back with the common opponent of Oklahoma State. And you're looking at it this weekend and thinking, okay, if OU can win that series somehow, then you can make up one there. If you sweep Baylor, you can make up one there. And OU did their part for sure. They get the 3-game sweep in Austin. And had you beaten Baylor, you would have made up a total of 4 games against those 3 common opponents, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and Baylor. And instead, you matched UT's result against Baylor. And so you don't take a step back. I mean, you gained in the standings, and it was a decent weekend from that respect. But, you really wanted that sweep, especially because you didn't get it in Norman. And so going 4-2 in those 2 series feels like a slight disappointment. And now you almost look around, and Texas is certainly still a contender, but Oklahoma State finishes off a sweep in Lawrence, and West Virginia sweeps in Morgantown against TCU. And so I think you've got, at this point, 4 or 5 legitimate conference title contenders. And I think you're in the mix there, but you could have really, like you said, taken a really big step had you been able to complete the sweep against Baylor.
Yeah, and Texas got swept. If I would have told you there were 3 sweeps this weekend and Texas Tech wasn't involved in one of them, I think at least I would have been very surprised.
Yeah, and the way the standings shape up now, I guess it's good and bad. We thought that we were playing the 4 toughest opponents in the first 4 Big 12 series,
Yeah.
and then OU kind of wasn't what we thought they would be, and West Virginia now looks really good. Kansas State looks far more formidable. And so you kind of, in that respect, like that those 2 teams, Kansas State and West Virginia, are ahead of you in the standings, and you control your own destiny there in 6 total games against those 2 squads. The downside is, you kind of went through what we thought was a gauntlet, went, I think, 4-5 in that stretch before the OU series. Now it's like, okay, now we got to go on the road to Manhattan, on the road to Morgantown. So maybe the hard part of your schedule isn't quite behind you yet. But yeah, if you somewhere or another get 4 out of those 6 on the road, I think you're going to be very much in the mix on the final weekend of the season.
Yeah, and if you just win every Big 12 series remaining, the West Virginia, Kansas State, and Kansas, you'll have 14 Big 12 wins. That's 6 more. You have 8. You're finally above water since you've been under or at 500 in the Big 12 since the Texas series. So you finally broke that plateau. You're back to 8-7. 14 wins in the Big 12. I think it'll get you in the tournament. There was a year where it didn't, I think, in 2015 maybe. But you're just a different caliber right now. And I think with this, even bad non-con that you ended up having, 14 wins in the Big 12 will be good enough. I still think you need a sweep. But Kansas State, West Virginia both ahead of you, and then Oklahoma State, I guess leader in the clubhouse because they have a series ahead. They don't have the best winning percentage. That's West Virginia. They're number 1 in the Big 12. But at 11-7, they've played more Big 12 games and, are 3 games ahead of you. I think Oklahoma State, likely the Big 12 champion. You've beaten them, so that looks good.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. They took 2 out of 3 against Texas in Stillwater. But besides that, as far as the other contenders, they lost their series against TCU.
Yep.
They lost their series against Texas Tech.
Yep.
And they lost their series against West Virginia. And so that's where I'm skeptical. Can you lose against 3 of the top 4 other contenders and still come out the champion? Yes, you can if you sweep, Baylor, Kansas, and kind of rack up all the wins that way. But that would be a little bit strange to me if Oklahoma State does win and then like teams 2, 3, and 4 potentially are teams that they lost to 2 out of 3.
Yeah, and they only have 2 Big 12 series left. They're a series ahead.
Yeah.
And that's Kansas. Let's see where they are. Kansas State in Stillwater and Oklahoma on the road. And sometimes they play those neutral site.
They hosted Oklahoma in a midweek non-conference game last week and destroyed them.
Yeah,
but
90
of course,
days.
midweek you take with a grain of salt, given the pitching depth there. So yeah, I don't know. They certainly could, and I don't know. If you just blindfolded me and asked me to guess the Big 12 standings, I wouldn't think that they'd be in first based on everything I just said. But sure enough, they are at this juncture. And West Virginia and Texas still haven't played. That'll, of course, be a very consequential series. And West Virginia, Texas Tech, of course. So, yeah, I think a lot of it is actually in the Mountaineers' hands. If we're, of course, looking at it mostly from Texas Tech's vantage point. But West Virginia's probably looking at those and saying if we can win both of those series or get 4 wins somewhere or another against those 2 opponents, they could be looking at having series wins over all 4 of the other Big 12 title contenders.
That was a type of series late enough in the season where it will either break Texas or put them on an absolute tear. We'll have to see what happens. They do have a schedule remaining that is a little bit, I guess, more forgiving, maybe you could call it. Of course, in the Big 12, I have no idea anymore. I really don't. And as you outlined, it could be that West Virginia and Kansas State are just two of the best teams, and we kind of slept on them a little too long, thinking they would fall off. Now, I've been respectful of West Virginia. They did not have J.J. Weatherholt for a couple of weeks. He came back this weekend. It was huge.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to believe one player is that big of a difference, but it certainly does feel like they are a much different team with him at second base.
When thinking back, I guess we had warning signs. They were the first Big 12 team to win a road series this season. And even just last weekend, maybe weekend before, they go to Stillwater. And Oklahoma State, just not to beat this dead horse, they are so up and down this year. Like,
Yeah.
they're feeling disrespected when we put them at number 2 in the power rankings. And then next weekend, they're like, we want to fire the coach. Then they lose a home series to West Virginia, and now they're atop the Big 12 standings, just like the most up and down team, I think, in the conference this season. But yeah, I think it's fair to say at this point, there are no elite teams in the Big 12. Now, I might change my mind on that if West Virginia wins 5 out of 6 against Texas and Texas Tech. But there's a ton of parity. And even teams like Oklahoma, who I think have been disappointing and living just, one step above Baylor for most of this season. Okay, well, they took 2 out of 4 against Stanford. They just swept in Austin against a team that's been number 1 in the conference all year. And even Baylor, as bad as they are and as much of a rebuild job as that is, they've been a thorn in a lot of teams' sides, even if it's not resulting in W's. I think they had 2 one-run losses to Texas. Like, they were actually a couple plays away from sweeping that series. And so there's no, really just bad team that's just a cakewalk either. So interesting dynamic in the conference this year. Usually you have 3-ish teams that have realistic hopes of going to Omaha. I think that's probably a stretch this year, but I'm not sure if it's ever been this even 1 through 9, especially kind of in the middle there, like 3 through 6, 3 through 7, let's say, because you can, for the most part, flip a coin right now. That's why doing the power rankings that we've been doing, they're legitimate gripes, but somebody has to go 6, somebody has to go 3, even if they're a really flawed team.
Right.
That's just kind of been the nature of the conference this year.
And I do think, 1 through 5 is much, much closer than 6 through 9. I think the bottom of the conference is pretty bad. But again, you've had those bad teams beating good teams every once in a while. Baylor has 6 conference wins.
I think 5 and 10 now.
So, that's not nothing. Let's get into the series a little bit this weekend, specifically Texas Tech and Baylor. Mason Molina, he's back, and he was huge on Friday night, in my opinion.
Yeah, we talked about him a little bit last weekend, just kind of basically saying you needed more from him than to be an opener for Girton. And so when he trotted out there as the Friday starter, I was like, almost a little bit disappointed. Like, okay, are we going to see 3 innings from him and then Girton? Because I think you need a lot of innings out of both of those guys to be successful. Maybe that was the plan, but he goes 7 innings, no runs allowed, 2 hits, and looked like the Molina that we've come to expect since last year. And so it was good to see him get back on track. And you can say, well, it's Baylor. Okay, but Baylor did just fine scoring runs on Sunday. They've done just fine scoring runs on other Big 12 opponents. And so I think that's really kind of bullet points 1, 2, and 3 for Friday. Your bats are what they always are in Lubbock. You score 10 runs, but getting 7 innings out of a weekend starter is just not something that you've done this year. And so really, really good to see the one starter that you kind of feel like you should have that level of confidence in get back to normal, get back on track, and have a performance like that you hope lifts his confidence moving forward here down the home stretch.
Yeah, last weekend in Austin, Baylor scored 9, 9, and 6.
I think that was in Waco, but yeah, point well taken.
It was in Waco. You're
Yeah.
right. I was looking at
So they're not losing games because they just can't hit. I mean, they're
right.
As we saw, most of their pitchers don't have that great of an ERA, and they've lost some competitive games. So again, they might poo-poo that and say, well, it's Baylor. Of course, Molina's going to do that. I think 7 scoreless innings against hardly anybody is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, especially this year. You haven't had it.
Right.
We talked about last week's start. What was it? Now it was a midweek. It was a Tabor Fast. Had one of the best starts of the season since Bo Blessy, and then now all of a sudden, I think that's the best start of the season.
I think so too.
Followed by Trendon Parrish, who another one. And I told you, I don't remember if you remember, but I said going into the Baylor series, the perfect setup, okay, for your pitching is to not need Beckel, for Molina to go 7, control that game without Beckel, have Beckel close Saturday, be prepared for that, and then in game 3, you have Gurton to come in after whoever starts. It's exactly what happened, but Gurton was the one that gave up the runs that ultimately lost the game. Now, offensively, you've not been good in game 3s since the Oklahoma State series. I think I could probably go back and be more specific about that, but you have struggled certainly in the last few weekends against teams in game 3, but that is a frustrating waste of a pitching performance from the first 2 guys to have your bullpen at full strength, basically. Now, I know it was a doubleheader. If you would have played again today, Beckel would not have stayed in that game. I don't think. I think you would have pitched an inning and you would have gotten him out quicker, and he could have pitched again Sunday. You probably have a guy from Friday who can come back. You might not have to leave Gurton in to give up, but he did it all in two at bats, maybe, the damage. So I don't know. It felt like a waste to not sweep there, especially after your first 2 games were so flawless pitching wise, in my opinion.
Well, I'll be honest. I mean, I don't think a lot of guys can make a living betting against Tim Tadlock, but I don't know why you trot Beckel out there at all on Saturday. You had run support. You had, a pretty decent lead there. And so I would have saved him for a potential game 3. And maybe they're thinking like, well, we don't want to go all weekend without pitching him at all, which I would kind of understand. But you find yourself in game 3 where it's tied up in the 7th or 8th. It's like, well, that's a great spot for your best relief pitcher.
Yeah.
And I wish he was available. So you needed Ryan Free in the middle innings of that game because it was I think it was even a tie game, 4-4 at one point. So I don't question that, but I'm not sure why Beckel went in on game 1 on Saturday.
Let me go to the box score because I feel like I might have an answer for you. That game being close when he was warming could have affected it. Let's see. Free pitched, okay, through the 7th. Let's see. 6th inning. Yeah, so Baylor scored 5 in the 6th. You scored 4, and then he came. Yeah, see, I don't know. So it was 10. Oh yeah, that's what it was. And then okay. So Beckel enters. They score 3 more, and then he stays in, right? So you end up being in there with a big lead. Here's my thought process. It's a doubleheader. If he is warming, Beckel's warming, and then you score 3 more and you set him down, can he warm again 4 hours later for the next game? Again, if it was on Sunday, I think you could have just parked him and then let him throw a few more, like a little bit of it a bullpen, and then have him play the next game. But I think once you started warming him in that first game, you had to pitch him. I think that's what it was, because you can't, especially when it's cold, you can't have a guy warm up and then sit around for 4 hours and then warm up again, I think.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
But
Something
I do
that
agree. You wish you could have had anybody else with a 5-run lead.
yes, especially again on Friday, you used one bullpen arm, Andrew Devine. And so again, you had to sort of bridge those middle innings with Ryan Free on Saturday game 1, but I don't know, like, could you go to Derek Bridges there and I don't know, some other arms, Dax Dothy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do question that decision. Like I was listening on the radio a little bit in and out, and I'm like, okay, we have a 5-run lead. Why is our best pitcher in the game? Like that's not the role that he typically plays. And then of course, fast forward a few hours later, it's like 4-4 or whatever it was there in the 7th, 8th, and I'm like, man, I wish we had Brandon Beckel right now. So I do question that. I don't recommend really betting against Tim Tadlock when it comes to managing a baseball game, but I do wonder about that one. You know, you're talking about warming up, cooling down, warming it back up again. I did that tonight with some brisket that my stepdad smoked for us this weekend when we were out at the property. Reheated brisket is pretty good, and he did a good job smoking that brisket. Didn't have the heart to tell him it wasn't quite up to the standards of Rehino barbecue, but there's no shame in that. You know, that's like being told that you're not quite as handsome as Brad Pitt. You're like, okay, I'll take that.
Right.
I think we just came up with Rehino's new tagline, the Brad Pitt of barbecue.
I'm in. Maybe we
I don't
find
know.
the Cliff Kingsbury. No, that's not. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll stick, but you get the point. Rehino Barbecue is the best barbecue in West Texas. Give them a follow on social at Rehino BBQ. Check out their website, RehinoBBQ.com. They've got their menu on there. You can order ahead to make sure that your food is there when you arrive. Home base out in Olton, or they've got the mobile food truck going all across West Texas. And we appreciate their support of the Gambling Gauchos.
I guess final thoughts on the baseball series. I'm not going to complain too much about winning a Big 12 series. Even against Baylor, even at home, you really should have swept that, but you've got 3 more opportunities to find a sweep. Harder on the road, 1 more against Kansas. But you really, every time you don't sweep, you really thin the margin to you can't lose another one. You just can't. I think if you lose another Big 12 series, you're probably a 3 seed.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, the conference RPI as a whole is not great. And so it's not like basketball where every night is a quad 1 game for the most part. You know, a lot of kind of middling RPIs up and down the conference standings. And so, you know, it's not the case that, okay, our RPI is going to go up automatically next weekend. It's like, okay, we're RPI 60, they're RPI 50. One or the other takes 2 out of 3, and okay, our RPI is the exact same as it was coming in. So yeah, that's going to be challenging. I think West Virginia now is maybe the team with them or Oklahoma State, probably the best odds to host, and I don't think you'll get more than 1 host.
No. And the RPI is so dependent on what everybody else is doing. Texas getting swept, TCU getting swept, and you losing once against a terrible RPI team dropped you 3 in the RPI. And you had a pretty damn good week, beating Grand Canyon twice.
Yeah.
And winning 2 games against Baylor. You know, going 4-1 and dropping in the RPI because everyone else in the Big 12 you needed to win lost RPI-wise. Now, just flat-out schedule-wise, it was a great weekend for Texas Tech because Texas got swept and TCU got swept, and you're trying to move up. By the way, TCU, are they broken? I mean, they have not been good.
I mean, losing what was it? What was their biggest? Was 8 runs their biggest margin of their biggest lead that weekend in Lubbock?
9? Was it up to 9?
And if you lose an 8 or 9 run lead and then lose that series,
Yeah.
like you said with the Texas series, it's either like a turning point or kind of bottoming out point. But after that, they beat Oklahoma State, and so I kind of thought, okay, yeah, like they're back on track. But I don't know. We do have a comment here that I think sets up for maybe a look ahead. It says Zane Petty and Tabor Fast were also really good in the midweek against a couple very legitimate hitters in Grand Canyon. Bullpen was saved all week to Saturday. Tabor Fast especially is the one that stood out to me. I thought he looked really good. Now, because he started and threw 6+ innings on Tuesday, he's not available this weekend. But with only 1 midweek game this week, I wonder if he doesn't start and if they try to work him back into the weekend rotation, either as, you know, a true starter, an opener, a long reliever after an opener. I wonder if he's kind of earned that opportunity. And so, of course, if he gets the start against Abilene Christian, then he won't be pitching next weekend. But if he's not the midweek starter, I do wonder if maybe they're going to continue tinkering with the weekend pitching rotation, and if he might have a role in that, because he spent some time earlier this season, you might remember, as your Sunday starter, and then sort of fell off of that role. And I wonder if he's maybe climbing his way back up.
Yeah, you don't have multiple midweeks again. So the time to move Tabor Fast back to Sunday would be now. I think you've pretty much settled on Molina on that Friday night role. And if you're in a regional as a 3 or a 2, you have to win game 1. Molina is your best pitcher, best starting pitcher. And I think you've set up for a regional with him on Friday, and he'll be in that role. And then Trendon Parrish has looked very good his last 2 or 3 starts, even since TCU, pretty much, maybe up and down a little bit, but he's looked very good on the weekend as a Saturday guy, game 2. Now, if it does work out that way and you win game 1, he would pitch against the 1 seed in the regional. But if Fast is your third guy, yeah, I think this weekend would be the weekend to put him back there. And then you have, whoever else pitch against ACU this weekend. Now, they're not bad. They're credible.
Right.
Not incredible, but they're credible.
I think their RPI is pretty close to yours, right? Like 60-something?
Yeah. But Zane Petty has also been, pretty good.
Well, I can't help but wonder with Bo Blessey. Now, he's healthy enough to pitch because we saw him in Norman. Did not see him this weekend, correct?
Right. Not really a spot for him.
I wonder, is it the craziest thing to think that he might be your midweek starter as you start to see if he can maybe build some stamina, get some experience back in a spot that doesn't matter as much? Because, again, I think your RPI at this point, you cannot build it back up to a regional host level. Like, to me, your chips are all in on either winning the Big 12 or not. And so does Bo Blessey become your midweek starter the rest of the season to get him some pitches? And maybe he, by the very end of the season, is like starter number 3 for a regional weekend or something. But is that a good spot to use him to save guys like Tabor Fast and Zane Petty if you want to try to work them into the weekend rotation for these last few Big 12 series and the Big 12 tournament? Because I think if Bo Blessey can round out into starter number 4, even if he can't go 6 innings scoreless like he did against Gonzaga, whether due to health, conditioning, if he's starter number 4 in a long regional weekend or something, I think you could do a lot worse than that. And so maybe you focus on finding 3 starters and everything for the Big 12 series these last few weekends of conference play and let him kind of take the reins every midweek.
Yeah, again, you have 2 midweeks left in 4 series. So it's an opportunity. They're both against the same team. So I don't know how much you learn, but
so it'd be like midweek, and then Big 12 tournament spot for him potentially. If you're playing a 3rd, 4th game in the Big 12 tournament, that way he could get 3 starts under his belt in games that have no consequence toward the regular season Big 12 championship before we get to the postseason where you might need him. And I don't know. I like, it's total speculation. I'm kind of obsessed with the concept of Bo Blessey, and like people who know more than me listening to this might be like, "Hey, he's not pitching this year. Like, get over it."
Right.
But I'm like, okay, well, why did you put him out there for an inning against OU if like we weren't going to try to work him back in some way? And again, he might not get back to that form we saw against Gonzaga in the first weekend. But I can't get it out of my head. I can't quit thinking about what he might become. And so I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there that I wonder if maybe he's your midweek guy this last month of the season.
I would like to see Jacob Rogers with no thought that he's going to go more than 2 innings. Maybe that's a bullpen role. Because I think he has good stuff. He's just been turned on a couple of times. They rocked him. Was that in the 3rd inning? They rocked him a couple of times back to back and he got pulled. But once through the order, he looks pretty good. So maybe if he gets put in the bullpen and he's in a position, or he didn't throw too many pitches, he could probably be in the bullpen this midweek, but you probably won't have him since he pitched on Sunday. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm also fascinated with Bo Blessey because I think he has the best stuff on the team. And they were so high on him in the summer, in the fall, and the spring. It's like
Yeah, and
I need to see that.
and I probably would have dropped the Bo Blessey stuff by now had he not pitched against OU. But it's like, okay, you're using one of those travel spots on him. You put him out there in an inconsequential spot because you were going to lose that game. But it was like clearly they wanted to see what he could do, and maybe they got their answer there and said, okay, like you're done for the season. But I don't know. I think midweek might be a perfect spot for him if they're still trying to ease him back.
If Bo Blessey's going to pitch as a Red Raider, it'll be this year. Yes, I mean I think he'll just.
I think
try to
so.
get in the draft because I mean he's getting older.
I
Right?
think this is year 4 of playing, and I guess he has a COVID year, but a lot of guys don't like to go to their last year of eligibility because they lose so much
Especially
leverage in the draft.
especially pitchers.
Yeah.
Tech will need all the arms they can get for the postseason. I still think this is a really good team. I agree, Greg. I think this is a really good team. It's not a great team.
Yeah.
But offensively, you're a great team. I think.
You were the kind of team in years past that could win a regional 3-0 and be done with it. I just don't think this team – we've seen enough sample sizes now, Iowa, Oklahoma, Baylor, that like you can win 2 out of 3 against almost anybody. Can you go 3-0 against good postseason caliber teams? Probably not. And so I think this team in the postseason is going to have to like really grind for everything that they get. And if you do win a regional, it's going to be ugly. It'll probably be in a spot where both teams in the regional final have 1 loss. If you go to a super, I'm sure it'd be a 3-game series that you win. So yeah, I think that they still have that capability to take 2 out of 3 against almost anyone. It's just not going to be as smooth and pretty as some past Tadlock teams.
Tad says, I thought Kyle Robinson was pulled prematurely, gave up back-to-back singles in the middle. Both guys ended up scoring when Girton took the mound, also on back-to-back hits. Yeah, I really thought Kyle Robinson should have been pulled earlier. He worked through it, and then they pulled him, at the next sign of trouble.
And that was frustrating.
At the pitch count, what?
That was frustrating because both of those guys on the back-to-back singles, there were 2 out singles, and I think he had both batters down to an 0-2 or a 1-2 count. And, of course, that inning turned into major trouble for you. It ultimately cost you the sweep. So, yeah, just another example of this team being kind of like really close to turning that corner from good to great team or good to great outcome on a weekend, and just not quite being able to get it done.
Yeah, so Robinson threw 71 pitches. I don't know what his limit is. 71 out of the bullpen is quite a bit. I thought that really was a fantastic outing for him. And I think it was, I guess it was Keith, the oft-referenced Keith Patrick from the Dinger Derby podcast, RedRaiderDugout.com, the foremost authority on Texas Tech baseball. He mentioned that I wish I would have looked at this before, but I think Kyle Robinson gave up 10 runs through 16 innings or something in his first 16, and has given up 1 in his last 10 or 15 innings. So he's really, really whittled down that ERA now. He gave up the 2 technically from Girton's watch, but he's been very good, I thought. And you need him to continue to be that Kyle Robinson, the one that showed up at A&M, the one that showed up against Baylor, and to have that kind of guy to go long and save a bullpen is really, really important in the regional.
Absolutely.
All right. What else? Do you want to talk about Tyree Wilson first and then get to the spring game, or you want to give a couple of spring game thoughts first?
Yeah, Tyree Wilson, a defensive player.
Yeah.
He plays defense.
Yeah, you need to call him sometimes. Call on him, maybe a third down. You don't want to be in a position to need to call him, but
but if you do need a sack on third down, or metaphorically speaking, need a different kind of defense. I think Tyree Wilson would make a good attorney.
I think so, yeah.
He could parlay a good playing career into saying like, you know how some attorneys have nicknames? He could be like the enforcer.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe he could be the 4th partner at Barnett, Howard, and Williams and Wilson.
The long arms of the law.
That's good. Anyway, Tyree Wilson plays defense on the field. Barnett, Howard, and Williams plays defense in the courtroom. That was a horrible slogan. I think the Brad Pitt of barbecue might have been better. But Barnett, Howard, and Williams, 3 double Texas Tech grads, based in Fort Worth, but they handle cases all across the state of Texas. You can learn more about the law firm at bhwlawfirm.com. They hope you never need them, but they're in your corner if you do, and they handle all sorts of cases. If you get hurt on the job, catastrophic injury, criminal defense, Title IX, you name it. Again, they hope you never need them, but if you do find yourself in an unfortunate circumstance, it's good to have somebody you can trust on your team. Barnett, Howard, and Williams, bhwlawfirm.com.
2 more quick baseball comments. Tad did the legwork per Keith. Kyle Robinson allowed 16 runs through his first 15 2/3 innings pitched this season. Since then, he's allowed 1 in 10 1/3, including today's outing. And I believe that was right before the Gurdon stuff, so he's technically given up 3, I think. But still, complete turnaround from Kyle Robinson. And then Greg says, if Tech ends up a 2 seed and if the NCAA committee doesn't revert back to last year on the bracket, which looked like it was from 2015, then Tech does have a good chance to get to a super. Yeah, and all that is all about where you're placed. And we won't know that till we get there. Hopefully it's not that Arkansas regional, because that would be an absolute buzzsaw.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see how the seeding goes. Texas Tech might be the team in the country with like the largest discrepancy between their top 25 ranking profile and their RPI profile, or where they're seated by the committee. Because you were ranked number 16. Of course, there's a million polls, but number 16 in D1 baseball and around there in other polls. Like, let's say you just hover there and, keep winning 2 out of 3 most weekends and finish 3rd place, 4th place in the Big 12. You might be the number 16 team in the country, staring down the barrel of a 55 RPI and being a 3 seed somewhere, like even worse, maybe a bubble team. So I don't know. There's always teams in basketball and baseball that have like a great net ranking or great RPI that maybe don't actually look that good to the selection committee, or vice versa. And so you might be one of those teams like, yeah, you don't want to go to the Fayetteville regional, but also I don't think any regional host wants to see you as the 3 seed. They're like, crap, we got the number 16 team in the country as the 3 seed in our bracket. Like, that's horrible. So I don't know. I'm really curious to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, and you need TCU in Texas to win some games.
But not too many.
Not too many. TCU, I guess, could win out if you win out. You just need to stay ahead of them.
Yeah, I was thinking for that TCU Texas series, you might be like rooting for the Frogs to win 3, but with Texas getting swept or by OU, I don't know. Now I feel like I just want one team to win 2 and nobody get the sweep.
TCU to win 2, I think.
I think that's probably what you would want.
Can they both?
But you got to
all 3.
You got to handle your own business for any of this to matter. So you got to win some games in Manhattan and Morgantown.
And I think the point is you don't quite control your own destiny like you've had in the past.
Right.
All right. Tyree Wilson. If I said pick 5.5 or higher being toward number 1, what would you say? Would you lock that in pretty vehemently? Because that's what we've seen.
I think that is probably the right number. Maybe 4.5 in terms of if you're going to put even odds on either side of that. Pretty much every mock I've seen has him going either 3rd or 5th to the Cardinals or Seahawks. And usually Will Anderson is the other pick. So it's kind of a matter of who you believe in terms of if one of those teams prefers one edge rusher versus the other, which direction do they go? So, yeah, I think I would take higher than 5.5. 4.5 would make me pause because I do think 5th is a pretty natural pick for him. And I alluded to this it was related to the spring game attendance on the last episode, that perception rarely catches up to actual momentum. And so Tyree Wilson, when he declared, we were like, okay, 1st round.
Right.
And then the momentum, we're like, okay, hey, like this might be top 20, top 15. And it was like, hey, he might even crack the top 10. And now here we are saying he might crack the top 5. And so I think there's clearly smoke that various scouting departments and GMs are falling in love with him, and for good reason. You could not build a better prototypical defensive end in terms of like body type than Tyree Wilson. So yeah, I think the momentum is real. I think if I had to lean one way or the other at even odds, I would probably say he will go top 5. And those seem to be, I don't always trust mock drafts, and teams trade, teams surprise you. They take a position that nobody thought they were targeting. So I don't know, but I think if I had to bet, I would say he goes top 5 to either the Cardinals or Seahawks.
The Stars just went up 3-1 with 3.5 minutes left. I believe they're still on a power play too. I had it up earlier on the Gamecast, but ESPN's Gamecast started talking, and I had to close it out. Freaking hate ESPN and CBSSports.com and all their stupid ads. Ryan plus 275, second best odds behind Levis to pick second overall. I think you'll have quarterbacks. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we saw odds-wise, he was plus 500 at some point last week to be the first defensive player taken, which is, that is certainly a broader conversation than just him and Will Anderson, but I think those are likely one or the other is going to be the first defensive player taken.
Yeah.
But, again, you just never know. If Bryce Young and CJ Stroud do go 1-2 and a team that really wants a quarterback panics and trades up to 3, then you get a run on quarterbacks. Who knows what could happen?
I think, let's see. Yeah, okay. So this is not to the team, but just for the pick, okay? Which you're saying, the Cardinals seemingly going to trade out maybe that pick at 3. So minus 2,000, Bryce Young, the most likely to go 1 overall. Will Levis has been shooting up boards to be the 2nd overall pick. Again, right now, that is the Texans. We'll see what they actually do, if they trade out or not. Plus 250 to go 3rd overall is Tyree Wilson. Plus 1,600 to go 4th overall. And that is the Colts pick. To go 5th overall, plus 250, even odds with Will Anderson, which currently the Seahawks pick.
So that's basically, so 3rd or 5th, if you were to bet 1 unit on both of those, you'd be risking 2 units to win 250, or 2.5 units. So that's pretty close to even odds at just spots 3 and 5. That's not accounting for if a team trades up to 2 or 4. So again, I think that 5.5 is almost perfect if you were trying to make it 50-50.
The odds have swung again. First defensive player off the board, Will Anderson, minus 200. Tyree Wilson, plus 170.
What was Will Anderson's line?
Minus 200.
Okay. So that's like a 2 and 3 shot.
Do you have a preference on team?
I do. Before I get there, I might have even done it a few seconds ago. Will Anderson is the edge rusher from Alabama. Will McDonald is the edge rusher from Iowa State, who I think is maybe fringe first round.
Yeah.
I might have called Will Anderson Will McDonald a few minutes ago, and I know a couple episodes ago I called Will McDonald Will Anderson when I was talking about, I think, Caleb Rogers' performance against Iowa State. So anyway, I do that sometimes. I think I meant to Butch Davis and Butch Jones on here during football season. Anyway, I know that Will Anderson didn't play at Iowa State. I was thinking of Will McDonald. So anyway, I wanted to clear the air about that. My preference, I think, would be Seattle. In terms of the franchise, I trust Seattle a lot more than I trust Arizona.
Yeah.
Arizona has just been, for 80 or 90% of its existence, pretty poorly run. Don't seem that serious or capable of being consistent contenders.
Yeah.
Seattle, kind of the opposite, especially since they hired Pete Carroll. They have down years, but their front office kind of takes it seriously. And, after being down a couple years, they're back. So they, even with Geno Smith, which I thought was going to be kind of a rebuild down year for them, he wins NFL Comeback Player of the Year. And they make the playoffs. And so pairing him with Jordan Brooks in a franchise that I trust to be a lot better long-term than the Cardinals, I think would be my preference. Now, I want him to go higher because that looks better for Tech. He gets a little more money, but I think long term, 2 spots isn't going to make that much of a difference, and I would like to see him a lot better in Seattle.
All right. Love that. I would love Seattle. But if it's not the top 5, I would prefer him to fall to 6 to the Lions. Now listen, I know you hate this, but Green Bay's falling, okay? The Vikings are the Vikings, I'm sorry. And then you have the Bears, who are they going to keep their quarterback, Justin Fields? Are they going to draft a quarterback? Are they trading back? Are they doing crazy stuff? But the Lions with Aiden Hutchinson and Tyree Wilson on the edges, you're not going to be able to focus on one of them. You're going to have to block both of them. I think that's a really good spot for Tyree Wilson in his career. And the Lions seemingly well run right now with Dan Campbell.
Except their casino gate.
Well, now we should talk about that. We're a gambling podcast.
Yeah, before we do, in a vacuum, you make a great point. He would pair really well with Hutchinson.
Yeah.
And I think they would be really successful. I do think that franchise is kind of turning a corner, recent suspensions aside. Just personally, I would hate that. I would hate having to root against him twice a year. And if the Lions do become a playoff team, then if the Vikings are also in the playoffs, potentially a third time every year. But yeah, it would be a good fit for him. I've seen him slotted number 2 in Houston, and I think he's an East Texas guy.
Yes.
Maybe that'd be a cool fit for him. You know, I think they still have a ways to go in their rebuild. But if they decide not to go quarterback, or they trade back a few spots and think they can get him at 4 or 5 or 6, I think that wouldn't be the worst fit in the world. So yeah, I think in a vacuum, I like the Lions. I just personally would not like it. But yeah, let's talk Lions suspension. Then I want to talk Cowboys and Vikings as well.
Well, if I'm doing like premier, just baseline projections where I would like to see him go, Texans would be number 2. Well, I guess Seahawks, Lions, Texans, but probably Texans at 10, or if they trade back in the top 10 from 2, you'd be in a position to get him again. And then one that would hurt me, but would be good for Tyree Wilson, I think, would be the Eagles. Now that would be falling all the way down to 10. Did I dream this weekend, or did the Eagles get Derrick Henry? Was that something that really happened?
I did not see that, but I don't follow NFL offseason as closely, and so I'm not ruling it out, but I did not see that. How about Vegas? If he falls all the way to 7,
the rumors aren't real at this point. So he might be going there. I don't know. We'll see.
My A's are moving to Vegas.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an intra-division team for Mahomes, but I could get on board with rooting for him in Las Vegas if he falls to the Raiders at 7. I don't want him to go to the Falcons at 8. Same deal as the Cardinals, just bad franchise.
I think he'll get picked in the top 10, but the draft is so weird. And Tyree Wilson's draft experience has been weird. I think maybe, and we were trying to get a draft expert on. I would have loved to have talked to somebody about this, but in some ways, getting hurt was the best thing that ever happened to Tyree Wilson, because he put on a ton of good tape through 9 games of the season, 8.5 or whatever he played, and then just got to be mysterious and got to go interview and did the bench press at the combine and was all right. But you really just let the tape speak for itself, and he was so productive. A lot of times when you're really productive and then you go in the combine and you're Tamba Ali and you don't do well, you fall. Now, Tamba Ali had a great NFL career, but had a bad combine. So, hey,
I will say
it was just, hey, let everyone talk about me and not have to do much and just be myself and fly up draft boards.
Yeah, and people that aren't Texas Tech fans see that and they're like, who is this guy? Like, he played at Texas Tech. How are teams seriously considering taking him ahead of Will Anderson? And I would be skeptical too. Like, every year there seems to be some kind of combine warrior or somebody has a pro day and you see the buzz and teams are starting to fall in love with him, and it's like, where is this coming from? Like, you've got guys that have put out 3 great years of film in the Big Ten or SEC, and you're about to, take this guy ahead of him. So I get the skepticism. Some guys I can think of, like Trey Lance, he gets taken 3rd overall out of North Dakota State after not playing because of COVID. It was like, to me, a little bit of a head scratch. Like, if I wasn't a 49ers fan or if I wasn't a North Dakota State fan, I'd be like, I don't know if I would have made that same pick.
Right.
And his career, certainly not over. I mean, he could turn into a really good player, but there are others. I thought they were kind of doing that with Josh Allen, and of course, he's turned out great, which I think is maybe in part a testament to the coaching he's received in Buffalo. But at the time, you're like, okay, this guy completed 55% at Wyoming. Like, what are we doing here?
Carson Wentz.
Yeah. I remember Darius Hayward-Bay out of Maryland
He's
when I was
fat.
a kid. He went like 7th just because Al Davis wanted speed, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, there's so many good wide receivers on the board. And so I feel like Tyree Wilson is getting lumped in with those guys, kind of like maybe really high upside, but high risk. And why would you take him over Alabama's player who plays the same position? But it's like, he's 6'6", 275. His arms are huge. He gets double teamed and like is still unstoppable. So I think people outside the Big 12 and outside of Texas are like, who look down on this conference. And it's not just Texas Tech. They'd say the same if King Felix or Will McDonald were being discussed top 10. They'd be like, these guys played in the Big 12. What do they know about projecting to the next level and all this stuff? So if I wasn't a Tech fan, I'd probably be in the same, like, why are teams thinking about taking him instead of Will Anderson? But knowing what I know, or at least what I think I know about Tyree Wilson, I'm not an expert talent evaluator or anything, but it's like, he certainly, if he had a different logo on his helmet, if he played at OU, like, he'd be a top 10 and there would be no ruffled feathers about that.
Right.
So anyway, I hope he gets to prove those guys wrong 5-10 years from now.
Agreed. And I think the good thing about going early in the draft is the same as the bad thing. There's a lot of bad teams up there.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there are some teams on the cusp of being good. And, historically the Lions have not been one of those teams, but I do think he's a good fit for them. The Seahawks, very focused on the defensive side of the ball and running the ball. And, Geno, Big 12 star, Geno.
Big 12 legend, Geno Smith.
Big 12 legend, leading the way there. I think they're safe, right? Especially in that division where the Cardinals are about to free fall. And the Rams are also going to be bad. I think there's a position for them to be in the playoffs. So, hey, I like the Seahawks. I would love for him to go in the top 5, but a top 10 pick is great. You've had 2 top 10 picks at number 10, and then you have to go back to Dave Parks, right? For the other one, that was 1 overall.
Yeah, because Crabtree was also 10. And then Jordan Brooks was not till like 30, 25, something like that.
30, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you've had anybody in between 1 and 10, because Dave Parks was number 1 overall. I know E.J. Holub got drafted into both. You had some guys that were NFL and AFL. I wonder where like him and Donnie Anderson went. I need to brush up on that history. Anyway, I think the craziest scenario for Tyree Wilson is if this Will Levis hype is real, and let's say Young, Stroud go 1-2, and somebody panics, says like, we really want Will Levis, and they trade up to 3 to get him. And then every other team that wanted a quarterback now has to trade up to 4, or they feel like they might have to trade up to 4 to get Anthony Richardson. I've seen Anthony Richardson mock number 4, which I think is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But that'd be if it's like all quarterbacks on the front end, and or if Will Anderson goes first and some team that really wants a defensive end thinks that they can't wait. Like if Anderson goes 3, would somebody trade up to 4 to get Tyree Wilson? I don't know. But that's where maybe you do have a team that is currently picking, or even like the Eagles that have 2 picks, a team that's more of a playoff contender, could they trade up into the top 5 or 6 to get him where he doesn't go into a scenario where it's like, okay, well, this squad was 4-13 last year and doesn't have a franchise quarterback. That's like typically who's drafting top 5. So I don't know if the trades get crazy because there's a run on one position or another, maybe some team that's like totally off the radar right now swoops in and grabs him.
You're right. Donnie Anderson went 7th. So he's the only other top 10 pick for the
Where did EJ Holub go?
16th
In the NFL draft?
overall. Oh, where?
No, yeah, like slot, but he was drafted NFL and AFL, I think.
Oh, that's right. You're in the NFL draft. So he was dadgummit. He was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. So I'd have to go back to the AFL draft.
Just go to their Wikipedia page.
And in the 1961 AFL draft by the Dallas Texans, 6th overall.
Okay.
Damn. Could have been a Cowboy.
Him and Toby Keith.
Could have been a Cowboy.
All right, so tell me, this isn't super on topic to Texas Tech fans. Well, I guess it is maybe for a lot of them. What do you want to see realistically for the Cowboys?
Man, a trade? I don't know. I really don't. You need a safety. To me, that's the biggest need. You re-signed the Wolf. You went and got Stephon Gilmore, who is probably going to play safety. Because he's old. I mean, he'll start at corner, but might eventually play nickel or even further back. You need secondary help. You need defensive help. It'd be really nice to get a linebacker or an edge rusher so Micah Parsons doesn't have to do everything. I thought he really wore down at the end of the season because he was playing so much edge rusher and he's just not big enough to be an NFL edge rusher full time. If you could have him be a specialist and just play down there on third downs and play linebacker more, that'd be awesome. Offensively, I mean, where you're drafting, this hurts a little bit. Bijan Robinson in the first round is something I've seen.
I was going to joke about that.
I do not want to take a first round running back, but
Bijan's pretty damn good, though.
He is, and it would make sense. And I think past a certain point in the first round, but you still get all the first round advantages of being a first round pick. So you'd have less years with him. You know, I would much prefer to pick a 5th or 6th round running back like other teams have done and been really good with. Do not want a running back. Yeah, no, please no. First round running back. I agree. Wide receiver, you still need help there. You have a lot of holes for the Cowboys. They're a good team, but you do still have a lot of holes that you could go get a starter with. I would lean defense though, and I would lean secondary, I think, just based on where you are. There's a lot of good corners in this draft. It's a really deep corner draft.
Is the other Texas running back Rashawn Johnson? He's in this draft class, right?
Yeah, but
I mean, well, like, okay, if you could take Bijan at like 12 or Roshan in the 5th, like, wouldn't you rather have Rashawn Johnson in the 5th?
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
That's my. I'm with you on drafting running backs. Like, I wouldn't take one until probably round 3.
Yeah.
Unless you're like just pretty much loaded everywhere and need, it's like a luxury pick. I've seen some buzz. Well, I'm going to give some background to this, and I want to know your thoughts on it, even though neither one of us are NFL talent evaluators.
Right.
When I was a kid and like becoming a Vikings fan, it was the tail end of Randall Cunningham's career, and then we had Dante Culpepper, and those teams were pretty good, like very consistently in the playoffs. After Dante Culpepper, for like, I don't know, a long time, we didn't really have a franchise quarterback. It was always some veteran that they would sign on a 2-year contract. It was like, okay, we got Sage Rosenfels or Gus Frerotte. The only times I remember them trying to get a franchise quarterback, a true franchise quarterback, they traded up to take Christian Ponder in 2010 or 11. Disaster. The guy's not an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
And then they drafted Teddy Bridgewater, who I actually think very good quarterback. Completely destroyed his knee. That was the first time I felt like, okay, we've got our quarterback for the next decade.
I forgot that he was with the Vikings first.
Yeah. And so, like, all these other times, like, oh, let's get Brett Favre. Let's get Donovan McNabb.
Yeah.
Just like, let's find anybody in the last 2 years of his career and plug him in for And so now I'm at least thankful to some extent that they tried on Bridgewater and Ponder. I kind of want to see them try because with Kirk Cousins, it's same deal. It's like let's just franchise him every year or give him a 1-year contract extension, and this will be his 12th season in the league, so he's not your quarterback of the future. I've seen some buzz that the Vikings are going to try to get Anthony Richardson from Florida, who is like maybe the highest ceiling, lowest floor first round quarterback.
Yeah. And you could let him sit for a year. You wouldn't have to play him. That'd be great.
Yes, exactly. I kind of want to see them try that.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically Patrick Mahomes and Alex Smith. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to compare anybody coming out to Patrick Mahomes, but
Well, but I mean, people didn't think Patrick Mahomes was going to be Patrick Mahomes in the NFL.
who's people?
I mean, 2-time Super Bowl champion through 5 years and an MVP or two. I mean, that's really high ceiling. I thought you certainly could be good, and I thought that was a perfect fit with the Chiefs. Is Anthony Richardson a perfect fit with the Vikings? I don't know, but
That's for Kevin O'Connell to decide and the new GM to decide.
High upside prospect with a veteran at the end of his career. I mean, that's what I meant by Patrick Mahomes, not specifically Patrick Mahomes, but
so you're saying right now, Rob, that if we draft Anthony Richardson, 2 Super Bowl MVPs in the first 5 years?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I'm like most curious. If they get Anthony Richardson, I'll be like, okay, like I'll buy in. Now I'm very skeptical in reality on him because like the combine, like there's nobody better at the combine. But like you also have to go between the lines and play the game of football. Like the game of football isn't a combine. And so can he transition from workout warrior to NFL quarterback? I don't know. The tools are there, but the tools have been there for a lot of guys like Jamarcus Russell and it didn't quite pan out. So I don't know. I just want the Vikings to try. And the same deal with the Chiefs. When they drafted Mahomes in the first round, I think he was their first round quarterback since like 82 or 85. And so it's like, you can't really compete long-term in this league without a franchise quarterback.
Dak Prescott was the Cowboys' first quarterback drafted. He was in the 4th round since Stephen McGee.
Wow.
So
I just want to see the Vikings try, and they could probably draft any position on defense. If there's a best available type guy, they're like, oh, we can't believe this defensive player fell to us at number whatever. I'm fine with that. But I think the one that would like really intrigue me is if they do get Anthony Richardson. Now watch, they're going to draft Bijan Robinson and like trot him out there with Dalvin Cook, who still has like 4 years left on his contract extension, which is so stupid. But I digress.
That does remind me. I have seen I was trying to think back of some mock drafts. I have seen the Notre Dame tight end quite a bit at 26.
It's like I'm not opposed to a tight end in the first round if you have a need there and if you're set at a bunch of other positions. But when your defense is atrocious, you can't draft a tight end in the first round.
Oh, about atrocious.
They're atrocious.
They are not atrocious.
They fired their defensive coordinator 1 year in. They ranked in like the 20s or worse in every defensive category.
The Cowboys.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was still talking about the Vikings.
Yeah.
My bad.
No, the Cowboys. I've seen the Cowboys mocked a tight end.
Yeah. Now, like the Vikings could probably use a tight end. We don't have an elite. Oh no, sorry. They traded for TJ Hawkinson second half of last year, so we're set there. But But yeah, you don't draft a position like that unless it's a glaring need and you're like pretty well set at other positions. In my opinion.
Schultze baby went to the Texans, which I was happy with.
Yeah,
freaking loafer. By the way, back to the Lions just for 1 second.
Oh yeah.
DraftKings and FanDuel and all these services are inside, the NFL. Brought to you by DraftKings. We're putting betting stalls in NFL stadiums. You have a team in Las Vegas. You can legitimately bet in Massachusetts at Patriots games, live in-game betting. You can do it at X amount of other NFL stadiums. It's widely available. But an NFL player can't bet on college football. That seems crazy to me.
I mean, I'll take it a step further. First off, I totally agree with you. Every professional sports league and association right now is lobbying in the Texas legislature to get it legalized here.
Yeah.
Like the NFL, MLB, NBA are all supportive of gambling, of sports betting.
Yes.
Now, pretty much the only form that I'm opposed to is a player betting on his own team. And even that, like Calvin Ridley, if you're not playing, I'm more or less okay with it. Now, maybe that's a gray area because he could still have some like inside scoop on somebody who's playing or
Right.
game planning. So I'm okay with that being off the table. But if a player for the Cowboys wants to bet on a Saints versus Bucks game, I don't care. I don't see any ethical reason why that is a conflict of interest, why that compromises the integrity of the game. I sure as heck don't think it warrants a 1-year suspension. And I guess the NFL has to do like a zero tolerance. Like you can't bet on the NFL or you can't bet on anything. But I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way even that Calvin Ridley was suspended as long as he was because he was on the inactive list. And especially a different sports league, I
Yeah.
have zero problem with it and don't know why it's being cracked down on like this. Again, while these leagues are out there spending thousands upon thousands of dollars trying to sway states where it's not legal yet to make it legal.
Oh, millions.
Yes.
And they're spending millions on advertising. And you have legitimate partners
Yeah.
in the NFL in DraftKings, and you have daily fantasy, and it's a huge billion-dollar empire. So are they going to suspend guys for betting on the NBA? No. But college football, I just don't understand that.
I mean, yeah, try sitting down, taking in the noon game, the 3:30 game, and then Sunday night football over under 500 FanDuel and DraftKings ads that you'll
Yeah, over.
It's just crazy. It's I don't know. I think there's a lot of rules
Online
like that.
and everything. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And people are like, "Well, that's the rule." Like they know what they're saying. Like I get that. I'm not really arguing that the rule was misapplied. I just think the rule is kind of stupid.
It's like suspending a Dallas Cowboy player for drinking Miller Lite. It's like Miller Lite is a huge sponsor. Or
Yeah,
Budweiser,
or
whichever one it is.
or marijuana. Like it's
Yeah.
legal in most states now. And I remember this clear as
Yeah,
day.
like a Seattle player getting suspended for.
I remember when Ray Rice was suspended for, I think it was 4 games for beating the crap out of his fiance or wife, girlfriend.
3, I think, or 6.
But
Whatever it
it
was.
came down at the same time. Somebody else was suspended like 8 games for weed.
Yeah.
And somebody tweeted, they were like, the NFL stance is basically hit your wife, just don't hit the pipe. And it's like, I mean, that's to me, that's backwards. And like, even if you're in a state where it's illegal, I'm not trying to interject my like opinion on marijuana or whatever, but it's like, what are we doing enforcing? Calvin Ridley bet $500 on a game that he wasn't playing in, gets suspended for a year. A guy gets found with a joint in his car and gets suspended more than Ray Rice for like punching out his girlfriend. It's just completely backwards to me.
Yeah. Kyle, pothead, confirmed.
Yeah, you know me.
All right. I just wanted to say that one thing, and I honestly do not know the familiars of the Lions case. That's just what I saw in a headline. So I probably should do a little more research on that before I get too far into it. But I do think that it's dumb. If it was only college football, I do, and I'm probably not as in line with you on the NFL stuff. I think there should be a blanket no tolerance for NFL games for NFL players. It used to be though that NFL people couldn't play fantasy football, but I think you can now.
I'll actually take my stance one step further.
Uh-huh.
I think you should be able to bet on your own league and on your own team if you're picking your side. Like I wouldn't want Calvin Ridley to take the under on any Calvin Ridley props.
Right.
Because he could sabotage that. But if he wants to go over and say that the Falcons are going to cover the spread, why not? Like that's extra motivation, in my opinion. I don't think that compromises the integrity of the game. He should be trying to catch as many passes, win by as much as possible anyway, right?
Right.
I'm pretty pretty libertarian on this.
I think if you need the extra motivation, maybe that speaks more to you than
Well, sure, but I'm just talking about from like an ethical standpoint.
right.
I get why it's bad for Calvin Ridley to say like, yeah, I think the Titans are going to cover against us today because like he could loaf on some plays and make sure that that's the end result.
Yeah, we all went out last night. We're probably getting beat.
Yeah, but I don't know if he wants to drop 5,000 on Calvin Ridley over 6.5 receptions. I have no problem with it.
I don't know. Hey, I saw
Now, in theory, probably not in practice. I think that probably opens Pandora's box. But
I saw an interview with Shannon Sharp the other day, and he was talking about a bonus he had in his contract for a certain amount of catches for a season and yards for a season, and he needed something like 7 catches and 150 yards to hit an extra $500,000. And at halftime, he had 6 catches, 130 yards. He didn't catch another ball.
see, and that's where teams will intentionally screw guys out of that. Like,
Oh, 100%.
they're like, okay, if you get 1,000,
To Shannon, we're winning.
yeah, like
Yeah.
if you rush for 1,000 yards in a season, you get 500K, and like you're at 986 after halftime. They're not putting you back in the game.
No.
So that's where I don't know. I'm fine with players betting on themselves on prop bets or whatever.
Yeah.
Because their team's going to screw them over, but I don't know.
All right, we did have the spring game as well this weekend.
Yeah, are you cool if we just review the prop bets?
Yeah.
And then go mailbag and then go in-depth spring ball on Wednesday?
I think that's a great idea.
Cool. So hand up, I deleted the prop bets list from my phone.
Oh,
So I'm going to try to remember these. Now, our trio of first touchdown scorers,
neither.
neither one. The first touchdown score was Loic Fungi, and he was not in either one of our trio. But from our trio, was Taj Brooks the first scorer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was Brooks or Valdez, Bradley or McCray, and then Cup or Tharp.
Yeah. But
Okay.
both Valdez and Taj Brooks scored.
Okay.
I don't remember if Valdez scored first or if Taj scored first. I think Taj scored first.
Attendance you estimate was over 5,250?
Yeah, I think there was a solid 4,000 on the home side and probably 1,000 on the other side. It was close. But there's no way they counted anything. So I would say a snug over.
Take 3, yes.
Yes. They hit 3. There was probably a 4th that I think they said the runner was down on a fumble.
Gotcha. Well, that would have been funny if there was some spring game controversy.
Yeah.
There
There were 3 interceptions. So
quarterback rushing touchdown, there was not.
I thought Shuck was going to pull it late when Taj scored. They just gave Taj a drive, like 5 straight carries, and he scored. Thinking back to the Houston overtime when he did that. But no, there were no touchdowns from the quarterbacks.
So I think that puts me at 3-1 because I missed the first touchdown score. I think I had over attendance, yes on take 3, and I had no quarterback rushing touchdown. And then, one that we had was more receiving touchdowns, Bradley plus Price or the field combined. And I don't think Price or Bradley scored, so that would have been the field.
The field, yep.
Okay, because Fungi got 1. Were there other receiving touchdowns?
Nope.
Okay, interesting.
Those are the only 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. Okay. So that is interesting. I'm blanking on others. Are you remembering any other prop bets? I think we only had 5 or 6.
Yeah, we had the sack prop, which there were 3 sacks, and that was from the mailbag. But I do not think that there was too many stoppages beyond that. Let's see. Baron Morton got out of a jam, and they ran to the sideline. And then Jake Strong ran right up the middle a couple of times to avoid getting sacked. Shuck was the only one that took a sack on the stat sheet.
2 more. I just pulled up a list that I sent via DM. Would there be a tight end touchdown, yes or no? I don't remember how I answered, but there was not one.
No.
And then this one, you're going to like formation with multiple quarterbacks, yes or no? And there was one.
Okay, but that was interesting to me. Okay. So that was not the spirit of it. Okay. Was that they were going to do that early, right? That it was going to be Baron Morton and elsewhere. But I think that Jaden Morris is probably working at running back. And I think Cooper LeFabre is probably working at receiver. Because those are quarterbacks 4 and 5 on the roster. And if they're going to be on the roster, they're probably doing other things. But yes, the entire fourth quarter was strong at quarterback, Jaden Morris at running back, and he ran hard and looked good. Probably the second best running back of the day, honestly. Now, defensively, you're going against guys that are also the third and fourth guys.
Sure.
But he had I'm telling you, Jaden Morris in a few years might actually be a running back at Texas Tech.
That's awesome.
And then LeFabre had a couple of catches at receiver, and he was playing outside receiver. And hey, again, if you're not going to be a quarterback at the college level and you're working around, so spirit of the rule, spirit of the law, spirit of the prop, I would still say no on that. But letter of the law, letter of the prop, yes, there was a whole quarter where you had 3 quarterbacks on the field.
So I picked no on that prop bet because I thought they were going to save looks like that.
Oh, so did I.
Again, like in the spirit, thinking they wouldn't put Shuck and Morton out there together. But
Or
like
strong,
you said, once you get to the 3s and the 4s and the 5s, it's kind of anything goes. So were they wearing red jerseys?
No.
But they're listed as quarterback. Yeah, that's it. I'll take the L on it because I don't want to be a sore loser. I picked no, and I think that would probably count.
Oh, I also picked no. Yeah.
If we were the bookmaker there, but
yeah, there were only 3 quarterbacks, and I don't even think they warmed up as quarterbacks before the game.
Yeah,
maybe one of them did.
Okay, well, we'll take the L on that one.
Yeah.
All right, we got a comment here. Morton's side got a steak dinner. Shuck's team got hot dogs.
Yeah, and there was a little bit because Morton, I believe, played for both teams.
He's all-time quarterback.
Well, I think he had a drive. I guess Shuck did it eventually too. But yeah, all the way. I just, what is this? Regular pillows are not geometrically designed to fit a human head. Did we say something there?
I have no idea.
That's got to be a.
Did you say something about a pillow fight?
I didn't know.
I don't remember.
That's got to be some quote that we're missing. Welcome in, though. You know who that is? Steven Stevens. Yeah. So the steak dinner thing, there was a couple of players playing kind of around. I guess if you got snaps on one team, you got the steak, maybe.
Yeah. It's like the year Anderson Varejao got traded from the Cavs to the Warriors.
Yeah.
And they played each other in the finals, so he was going to get a ring no matter what.
Or Benji Molina getting traded from was it the Cardinals or the Giants when they won the World Series against the Rangers?
Oh, I don't know.
He lost with the Rangers, but got the ring. Or did he go to the Giants and win? One of the two. Rob, I thought you were French, not Spanish. Well, the love languages, they're also similar. But I know more Spanish than French. Speaking of French, did you see my hat?
French Bulldogs?
Yeah, the Daniel Bacho today committing to the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs.
Oh, yeah.
This hat was just around. I really didn't mean that, but yeah, he gets a mention. You worried about that at all?
Am I worried about what?
Sorry, I didn't see you put your camera off. Daniel Bacho not coming back.
No, I wish he would have returned. I liked his game when he was healthy and thought he could have been continued to be developed into a good player. I mean, they just don't. There's not a whole lot of 6'11" guys who can run and move like him. So I wanted him to stay despite potential flaws. Although a landing spot like Louisiana Tech makes me think that, I don't know, it makes me wonder if maybe he was not encouraged very highly to come back. So I can't believe he would choose Louisiana Tech over Texas Tech in a total vacuum.
Yeah, or another Power 5 school.
Right, yeah, that's where, like, if he had gone somewhere in the ACC or wherever, I would have thought, okay, he just chose them over Tech, but I don't know. So that makes me think maybe there's bigger and better things at play.
Yeah, and you go back to a former assistant, Talvin Hester, and a familiar system, and he'll be really good at that level. All right, Diversified Lenders Mailbag.
Let's do it.
Brought to you by Diversified Lenders. You can turn your accounts receivable into cash and do lots of other things with those 2 Red Raiders that own that business. I haven't talked to Cole in a while. We need to talk to him. Maybe talk to him in the off season. Get him
He's
on the
fishing.
pod. He is fishing this weekend. Yeah. He said something about that fish. It was the only way to hold it or something because it was cold. I think he was just trying to make it look bigger, though. Can Kyle sing some Les Mis?
I could.
We have had the Les Mis pod. I don't know that we need to do that again.
Agreed.
This one's to me. Do you feel that Kyle has lost touch with the commoners after moving from Lubbock? No, I think Kyle's still a man of the people. I think he tries to be. I think maybe at some point he returns to his roots, maybe back to Austin and his little city boy. But I do think he feels and strives to have the Lubbock mentality even over there in Fort Worth.
I have no roots in Austin. I want that on the record.
Well, you were born there.
I was born there, but
Yeah, that's a hometown.
no, I disavow it.
Power rank your top 3 Regino menu items.
Man, that's tough. I'm really fond of the jalapeno, I think it's cheddar jack sausage.
Yeah.
Probably put that number 1. The brisket burger is really good. I might put that number 2. And then I guess just for some variety, I think the sliced turkey is really good if you want a little bit of variety, if you're getting brisket or ribs. And so I'll put that number 3.
Just because the question is asked how it is, I'm not gonna go like traditional here. The brisket is great. Brisket's number 1, but let's go off the board a little bit. I would go Texas Twinkie number 1, which is the stuffed jalapeno popper, brisket stuffed jalapeno popper. I would go burnt ends 2. Huge fan of the burnt ends. And then they had a pecan cheesecake kind of thing. The banana pudding was good. I would also say, I like the cream corn. So maybe I go green chili cream corn there. What is that? Is that Brahms ice cream?
Baskin Robbins.
Baskin Robbins. Okay.
Yeah.
Was it melting over there? My bad. Keeping you too
No,
long?
my wife just got back from the store.
Oh, nice.
She brought something back with her.
What do the picadors have to do to get Rob in a press room with a massive, unnecessarily large Gambling Gauchos microphone? Or for post-practice coaches interviews next season, I want to tune into the post game and hear Rob Bro here with the Rob Bro Show and Gambling Gauchos. I will say this. I've been in the Lubbock media space for 8 years going on. This will be my final week at KKAM, Talk 103.9. And in my opinion, I will be able to cover Tech sports better not being on Lubbock Sports Radio for the foreseeable future. So I expect to be at more availabilities, and I expect to be at more practices. So maybe I do get an unnecessarily large microphone and stump for staking the plains and the Gambling Gauchos.
Yeah, congratulations on the move. And when we decided to help transition staking the plains, I think that was kind of top of mind for you, that like one day hopefully you'd be able to really put a bunch of time and effort into that. And so hopefully that's a fruitful phase of this podcast and of your career, and look forward to I know I'm kind of your coworker here, but also like following along and seeing what you do over there, and hopefully helping out a little bit if I can.
Speaking of, the inaugural post from my venture into Staking the Plains is live. You can go read some Staking the Plains thoughts on the spring game at stakingtheplains.com.
I'm going to do that. Also, in addition to the big mic, we need a big hat from Cardinals, like one of those giant Gambling Gauchos hats.
Yeah, it's a big hat. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's a big hat.
Burt Reynolds.
Yeah. Turd Ferguson. It's a funny name. If April 22nd is Earth Day, when is Earth 2 Day?
August 44th. You double the month, double the day.
Okay. I wasn't familiar with August 44th.
Yep.
I think, who was it? Jackson tried to do it backwards. So it'd be December 4th. But let's see. What's the better spring game? A pogo stick obstacle course or a slinky down the stairs?
Pogo stick at my age, man, that's a dangerous venture.
Yeah, I never did the pogo stick.
When you're 9 and you fall down, it's like whatever. You just get back up. When you're 30, it's like, dude, I might really land on something wrong and kind of ruin my month or year here. So give me the slinky down the stairs. Play it safe.
Ruin your month or even your year?
Yeah, I'd probably call diversified lenders too and sue the pogo stick company. I don't think they do that, but
No.
I just like to do ad read segues whenever I can.
Did you ever do the slinky? Big slinky guy?
I had a slinky.
Yeah.
I had a rainbow slinky when I was a kid.
Slinky, slinky. Everyone loves a slinky.
Did you do yo-yos at all?
Oh, I had the X-Brain. Stick down there. Oh, hell yeah. I did.
Was it called like you rock the cradle?
Yeah, rock the cradle, walk the dog.
Yeah.
I saw you crumple up a piece of paper and put it on the floor, and then you zip it down there, and it bzzz on the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yo-yo. That fad did not last long, though. Who do you think the starting linebackers will be week 1? I'm assuming this is off-ball linebackers. Josiah Pierre, Jacob Rodriguez, who did not play in the spring game. And then I would say Steve Linton and Miles Cole will be the edges, which are technically outside linebackers.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Start, bench, cut these chocolate-covered movie candies. Raisinets, Junior Mints, Milk Duds.
Start Milk Duds, bench Junior Mints, cut Raisinets.
I would start Junior Mints, bench Milk Duds, cut Raisinets. What are the? I would start Goobers. Is that the chocolate-covered peanut?
They also have those like just cookie dough bites at the movie theater that are covered in chocolate. Those are also really good. I think it's just called cookie dough bites.
Yeah, those are good. Did Dre McCray get any throws? No, I don't believe he had a single target, even, which was interesting. But you didn't really work the ball down the field much. You had one deep shot to Miles Price. It was windy. It was a weird crosswind. And the deep shot to Fungi was a broken coverage, in my opinion. I thought the corner thought he had safety help. The safety thought it was man, and Fungi just got loose. Credit to Morton for hitting him in stride and for Fungi to finish the 30 yards or whatever since the catch, but McCray was not active, no. Do we get new uniforms before week 1? We've not seen that teased anywhere. It certainly could be a well-kept secret.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything on message boards, haven't heard anything. So, yeah, maybe they're keeping a really close circle of people who know that new uniforms are coming. But I guess I'd be surprised at this point, though usually that's announced like in the summer. So I think if we're going to get new uniforms, you'll probably find out in June or July.
Yeah, this is from comment. McGuire did say that they were being extra vanilla, kind of coyly, in response to a question about Dre McCray. So again, I don't. They didn't take a lot of deep shots. They didn't have him in they didn't do any motion. They didn't do any crazy stuff. I'm not down on McCray at all since he didn't get shot here, but I just think they were very, very vanilla and didn't need to do a lot of things. Is the Morton Fungi connection the new Harold Crabtree?
Hey, it might be even better. Who knows?
Well, we'll see. I don't know.
Speaking of wanting to temper expectations there with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting. For 134 days to kickoff, we did Graham Harrell's career touchdowns, which is a Power 5 record.
Yeah.
We also could have done Michael Crabtree's single season receptions in 2007, also 134, also a Power 5 record. So yeah, if any connection is like sniffing that Harold at Crabtree, count me in.
How many
But
days
that's a
are we at?
pretty high bar to clear.
How many days are we at now?
Now it would probably be 130.
129. Dylan Gandy was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts. Future Super Bowl champion, Dylan Gandy.
Would love to use it, but I think we've got Dylan Gandy in the 50s or 60s, and those are hard to come by. The lineman numbers.
I was just still looking at the draft.
Yeah.
Kevin Curtis was drafted 127 overall to the 49ers.
Okay. We can use that probably.
Zach Thomas, we missed him, 154 overall.
Yeah, but we'll do him for 35.
Timmy Smith, Super Bowl champion.
Hey, by the way, on that note, if you listen to this podcast and you follow us on Twitter, we're just kind of ramping up some activity on Instagram and YouTube. So you'll see the countdown to kickoff on Twitter, but we're doing it a little bit different video format on Instagram and YouTube. So if you want to follow along there, it'll just kind of be a different look, and maybe you'll, I don't know, enjoy that presentation a little bit better. So we're the same handle at Gambling Gauchos pretty much everywhere. So if you're not subscribed on YouTube or following on Instagram, it'll be a little bit newer, hopefully better stuff over there if you want to join us on those platforms.
Tad, Kyle, you were not in attendance at the spring game. Do you want to give us a GOAT update?
Yeah. So usually goats have a little bit of a litter. I don't know if that's a term with goats, but our goat only had one, but she's healthy and in good shape. We got the update midweek that it was a boy. And they don't have a ranch hand. They have like a local high school kid who goes and checks on things every now and then.
Yeah.
And I think he got the umbilical cord confused for manhood. So we got there and we're like, this is not a boy, it's a girl. So yeah, healthy kid girl. And goats, for those who don't know, they move fast out of the womb. So like 12 hours they can frolic and jump. And so
Wow.
I've got videos of the baby goat doing all that. So yeah, healthy and good.
Do you frolic, Kyle?
Not anymore. Once upon a time.
Some of you stopped at 32.
Yeah.
Frolic's a good word. This is an interesting question. Is McGuire going to do that thing where he refuses to publicly name a QB1 until kickoff against Wyoming and then remain coy about who's the top dog? No, but yes. I think you'll know a starting quarterback 2 weeks before Wyoming. I don't think there's a huge decision there. And if you watch the spring game, Baron Morton had a better spring game than Tyler Shuck. But I still think that Tyler Shuck is the starting quarterback for Texas Tech. And I think that will be decided in the fall. I do think that this is a legitimate competition, though. And I think that Baron Morton will push Tyler Shuck throughout the season. So I don't ever think that you're going to hear McGuire say, Shuck's our guy. Shuck has an infinity leash, and it's Shuck to be Shuck for Shuck's eternity. I don't think you'll ever hear that kind of powerful statement.
When's the last time your starting quarterback made it through all 12 regular season games?
Starting 2016. Technically, Shimanek did, healthy, and then finished the game against Texas. So 17-16 is the year.
Okay. So, yeah, my point being there, it's likely that you need both no matter who, quote unquote, wins the job. Now, you hope that's not like the starter gets hurt in the very first game like Shuck did last year, but you could be right in the heart of the schedule, game 6, game 7, starter goes down, and you need the other guy. So, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter who wins the job, but like you said, I feel like you've got two guys that can play. They can start Big 12 games. They can win Big 12 games. And there's I think, good chance, whether due to competition, performance, or injury, that you see both of them at least play significant snaps, if not both start games. And so I think they both need to have that mindset all season.
Steven says, "Oh, Joey is climbing the crane." That's not right now, though.
After May 6th.
Yeah, after May 6th, his daughter is getting married. I don't know where. It's kind of an odd update there from Steven. I need some clarification on what he meant. If we're missing it, I don't know. Tad says, "How many kids is that now?" I guess 2 kids for Kyle. You get to own this one and then have your daughter.
Well, this might be my granddaughter goat because the father is my goat, which I think would be my son. So I don't know if we're gonna how far down my family lineage we want to go there.
Yeah, we don't need to.
Yeah.
Greg, goats are awesome as a 4-H agent. That's what I recommend to show. Oh, there you go. Yeah, will Shuck finish the year healthy? Again, if Shuck is injured, it will not be that collarbone because has a titanium plate in it. And I think,
Ding, ding.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. In all honesty, whoever starts the first game, I want to start 12 games.
I'm my own grandpa vibes. We got that comment in the chat.
Have you
You know that song by Willie Nelson?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say from Willie Nelson. Did he sing it too?
Yeah.
Do you know what I know that song from?
Yeah, who else sings it?
The Stupids movie. Tom Arnold sings it. I am my own grandpa. Yeah. I did not know Willie Nelson had a version.
Yeah.
You familiar with Tom Arnold?
Yeah.
One of my favorite SNL skits, not favorite, but one of the ones I remember is, I guess Chris Farley as Tom Arnold, and then somebody else being Roseanne. Did Tech win the spring game? This is I think, trying to be funny question. I don't know. It could be a serious question. I'll take it seriously. I do think that Texas Tech won the spring game. Yes, I think AU got out healthy. I think Steve Linton and Miles Cole showed that they are a legitimate force. Kyle, you did not have what I would say are 2 integral role players on the defensive line and 2 starters, so 4 total. You did not have a starting linebacker, and I thought the front 7 played really well. But also, Texas Tech rushed for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half / red zone periods. So you also had some success. I think if you look at it, both sides of the ball looked competitive. And I thought you saw enough from both sides. The energy was there. It was well attended for being off campus. I would still like to see that thing get more attended and maybe have a more of a party vibe or whatever it is. You kind of look around and see other schools getting huge attendance in their spring games and are kind of jealous of that. You look at Colorado this year with a sold out spring game. So I do think there's some opportunity there, but yeah, I think Texas Tech won the spring game. Sure.
I think they won for one reason only, and that's it. Nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
And I will say you might even have more reinforcements. It would be a long shot. But that Justin Horn kid from Louisiana, the linebacker, did you see his recent hurdle clips?
Yes.
I'm not saying he's going to come in as a true freshman and be a factor just because that's a tall order. But I ran hurdles in high school. Obviously not at that level, but like it was 5A. And so there were some kids that were pretty good and they ran at the collegiate level. And I remember, at least back then, like if you were sub 40 in the 300 hurdles, you were fast. Like I think 40 was my best time, and I wasn't one of the elite guys, but the really good guys who like ran at state were like 38 seconds. I, I didn't like laser time his, but if you just watch like the video, like what time the gun sounds and when he finished it, I think he ran it in like 36, 37.
You
And, he,
37 something, I think.
and he's like a 245-pound. So I'm talking skinny guys like me, like wide receivers and skinny track dudes ran 38 and they were fast. This guy's a 245-pound linebacker and he's running 37.
Yeah.
That kid, whether it's this year or whenever, is gonna be so insane it's not even funny. Like I'm so hyped for that guy.
Well, and Dingle, his first play in the second half was a tackle for loss.
God,
Just
I can't wait.
shooting through speed and getting to the backfield. We will talk about the spring game more later in the week. I've got two players I'm excited for. Blake Burris was a personal protector for Austin McNamara last year. He played in all 13 games. He looks even bigger this year. I thought he looked big and out of place as the personal protector last year. He basically started at defensive tackle. I think he'll be heavy in the rotation. He is 6'5", 310 and looked athletic. And if he can just be a guy to get out there and throw his tree arms up, you could potentially, Kyle, have 6'5" Linton, 6-something Ledette, 6'5" Burris, 6'6" Miles Cole on a 3rd and long.
It's all pinning their ears back.
That's an NFL defensive line.
Yeah.
That is unreal.
I had a moment like that playing high school football. We were playing a team that was like top 10 in state, and all they did was like quarterback power because their offensive line was so good.
Yeah.
And like 4 of their 5 offensive linemen were D1 commits. Now they weren't all like high low, but it was like Air Force, Baylor, I think Texas. And so like I remember they walked out for their first years, and I was like, holy, like these guys are like 6'6", 280 in high school.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my, and like, I'm buddies with the dude who's like the starting defensive, and I'm like, dude, they're about to like destroy you. It's like, I mean, like I like you, dude, but I mean,
Yeah.
they're on another level. So yeah, that's a positive, and similar to what you're just saying. I didn't get to watch the spring game yet, but I saw some pictures of Steve Linton, and he passes the eye test. Like first off the bus, send him out for the coin toss.
Yeah.
There's guys like that, and you don't have to look like that to play football. But like if you remember Taylor Mays at USC or Tim Tebow, this is like huge rocked up dudes. You're like, okay, that's a legit football player. I feel like you look the part in a way that you haven't in quite some time. Like there were defensive lines, as you know, Rob, that ran out there when we had the 127th ranked defense or whatever. And it's like, okay, we look like we're the 127th ranked defense. Now you've got Tyree Wilson, Miles Cole, Steve Linton, all these dudes. And you're like, okay, we look like a legit Power 5 defensive line now. So
Yeah.
that's good to see.
Now, he's not Sean Oakman, right? He's not 6'9" and shredded. He's certainly shredded, but, he's one of those guys at the coin toss where he could do the Zeke Elliott and show off his midriff and have a tattoo there and just be like, okay, this guy is something.
Reminds me too of the time I walked by Jordan Brooks in the team facility. And it's one of those things like when you're watching on TV, like you know that the starting middle linebacker is a big dude. But to walk past and be like, oh my God, he's like three of me could fit like inside his shoulders. Like, I don't know. It's a different perspective when you're up close and personal. And of course he was sort of a unicorn at that time. He's a first round pick on a defensive unit that overall wasn't very successful. But now I feel like you've got a bunch of Jordan Brookses and Miles Coles running around, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah. All right. Final thoughts?
Yes. Final thoughts is actually related to Farmageddon. So 2 defensive ends, one from each school. Felix Anudike Uzama from Kansas State, Will McDonald from Iowa State, not Will Anderson, even though I know I've made that mistake before. Both, I think, kind of fringe first-round guys. Both have been mocked to the Kansas City Chiefs, which, of course, is an NFL team with ties to Texas Tech fans and just fans of the NFL in the Midwest. If Will McDonald goes first round, whether to the Chiefs or somebody else, he will be Iowa State's first first-round selection since the 1973 NFL Draft. That is the longest first-round drought in the Big 12 by a margin of 35 years. I like both of those football players. Of course, we got to see Texas Tech play against both of them the last few years. And as a semi-Chiefs fan, I think it'd be cool to get to root for one or the other if they're drafted by the Chiefs. I'm leaning toward it being Will McDonald just so Iowa State can break that streak, but we definitely want to see King Felix in a Chiefs uniform as well. So that's another thing I'm looking forward to in the draft this week.
Both of those make a lot of sense. Obviously, the Kansas State hometown vibes would be awesome. But either of those guys I would love to root for in the NFL. That'd be great. Great final thoughts. Can't top those.
All right, that's it then. Love y'all.